Tonight we'll be tying a soft hackle wet fly, and there's a lot of ways to tie them, but I'm going to try to follow one of the more traditional methods. I got this method out of the writings of a fly fisherman who wrote a number of books between 1910 and 1939. His name was George Edward Mackenzie Skews, and he was a British fly fisherman who's been called the father of nymph fishing. And interestingly, he got in a lot of trouble because in the British Isles, dry fly fishing was the only thing considered acceptable. But the way he tied these soft hackles and explained it in his book, it was considerably different than most of the conventional ways that we see them tied. Most of them, the hackle gets tied in at the end and it's tied in by the tip. But he explains to use brown partridge, and partridge come in two color phases. This is more of a brown phase, and then there's also a gray phase. So I have here one of the brown partridge feathers, and it's the color we'll be using to follow the instructions of Mr. Skews. So the way he started out, his first part of his instructions, they did not have eyed hooks in those days, so they were tying a gut leader directly into the hook. So since we have an eyed hook, I can eliminate those steps. So we're tying with Pearsall silk, that's an old British company. It'd been around for hundreds of years, and it was what they mostly used for their fly tying. But his instructions say to tie the hackle in by the stem with the face down, or the curve down. So that's what we'll do. Tie it in a couple turns, cut off the excess. Now these flies had extremely thin bodies for the most part, and they were basically very simple. They mostly only consisted of the tying silk in various colors and a hackle from a hen, a game bird of some sort, or even assorted non-game type birds. So you wrap back as far as the point of the hook. And I had asked a man by the name of John Shaner, who's kind of an authority on these flies, very well known in the field, and I expected some fishing-related answer to why they tied the body so short. His answer was that they didn't have a vise, so they were holding the fly like this, and that was as far back as they could conveniently tie. So no great fishing revelation there, but interesting. So what we're going to do, instead of the traditional way of wrapping a hackle forward, we're going to wrap it back. Towards where the thread's hanging. And then pull it out of the way. Tie it down. Cut off the excess. One of the interesting things about this is that as you look back into some of this fly fishing history, these British flies may have had their origin in Spain, and they look suspiciously like the Japanese tenkara flies, which were tied 1,000 years ago. So anytime you think you've got something new, it probably isn't. Now, the other thing that Mr. Skews says is in order to get lifelike motion, or what he called kick, to his soft hackle flies, you actually did your whip finish behind the hackle instead of in front, which braces it forward. And one of the things that I've run into doing that is I find it difficult to use a whip finisher behind the hackle without messing it up. So if you've ever finished a rod guide doing this the same way, you wrap about a half dozen turns of thread over a loop of mono. Get rid of a few strays that I had there, keeping tension on it. You you cut your thread and put the tag in through that loop. And then you pull that loop through, and that gives you the same finish as a whip finish. But you can place it a lot more carefully where you want it. And the last step will tip that fly down a bit. And Mr. Skews recommends using the finish of the day, which was celluloid dissolved in acetone. But actually I use Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails. I find that the head cement, which is very similar to what he was talking about, tends to run. It's very thin and it will discolor the body of the fly. So a small drop of the Hard as Nails nail polish right on the knot takes care of that. So there we have the Partridge in orange.